One day, when the glory comes, it will be ours, it will be ours. Oh, one day, when the war is won, we will be sure, we will be sure. Oh, glory, glory, glory. Oh.
In reason of the Civil Rights Week, me and my two collaborators, Romel Cassis and Gabriel David, decided to resume the civil rights history. Around the years 1800 to 1850. The Underground Railroad was a network of safe houses and secret routes used by African American slaves to escape into free states. ALEs helped the escape from the slaves because they were sympathetic for their cause. 100,000 slaves escaped via the railroad.
From 1861 to 1865. The 16th President of the United States, Abraham Lincoln, was the one who started the American Civil War. He also signed
the Preliminary Emancipation Proclamation,
declaring all rebel states should be freed on January 1, 1863. Sadly, he was assassinated because of his conviction about civil rights. From 1877 to 1965, the Jim Crow law, a law that enforced racial segregation in the southern state, was one of the most contested laws in the US. They named this law the Jim Crow law because Jim was representing all the stereotype of a black man at this time.
From 1861 to 1865. The American Civil War occurred among the 34 US states. 7 slave states declared their secession from the United States, and they created the Confederate States of America. The war left a higher number of dead soldiers than the American military deaths in World War I and II combined. This war brought awareness that the racism between blacks and whites was only increasing. On May 17, 1954. The Brown vs. Board of Education event occurred. A little more explanation. The Supreme Court of the United States stated that separate educational facilities are inherently unequal. It's important to understand that schools at first were separated for blacks and whites. This ruling paved the way for integration and was a major victory for the civil rights movement.
On May 24, 1955, because of the Brown vs. Board of Education and segregation in school, a project that will be named Little Rock 9 was submitted and approved.
In the fall 1955,
9 African Americans entered the Little Rock Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas. It caused a lot of stigmatization all around US because it proved that black students could be as great as white ones.
On June 1963, John F. Kennedy, the United States President at this time, delivered on radio and television a speech on civil rights. The speech given by Kennedy transformed civil rights from a legal issue to a moral one.
In 1965, the southern states were precluding black voters to vote. Martin Luther King Jr., after SCLC, decided to create Selma. Selma is a Pacific march from Selma to Montgomery to raise awareness about difficulty faced by black voters in the South.
On August 6, 1965, the Voting Rights Act was signed by President Lyndon B. Johnson. The Voting Rights Act banned certain requirements used in southern states to disenfranchise African Americans. The act secured voting rights for racial minorities throughout the United States.
On February 26, 2012, Trayvon Martin, a teenager, was fatally shot by George Zimmerman, a neighbor watch volunteer in Sanford. George shot him because he was suspecting something from Trayvon, because he was wearing a hoodie and because he was a black guy. It increased the world phenomenon Black Lives Matter, who raised awareness about prejudices that are still present in 2014. On August 9, 2014, Ferguson riots and protests began after the fatal shooting of Michael Brown, a black citizen, by a white officer. The riots and protests were named Ferguson because they started in Ferguson.
On April 12, 2015, Freddie Ray was arrested for what the police called an illegal knife. While he was being transported in a police van, he fell into a coma and died 7 days later. Officers involved used unnecessary force during the arrest. The police officers were accused of being all involved in Gray's death, and the incident resulted in an ongoing series of protests. It is not okay that blacks have lived all those inequalities since so many years. This can join the injustices lived between men and women, and the fact that we still do not accept homosexuality. Hey Rose, you forgot to say that everybody should be treated in the same way. A black woman should have the same amount of chances to get a job than a white man does. The sad part with this is that even after all those events previously explained, racism is still nowadays really present in our everyday lives.
That's why we walk through Ferguson with our hands up. When it go down, we woman and man up. They say stay down, and we stand up. Shots we on the ground, the camera panned up. King pointed to the mountaintop, and we ran up.
One day, when the glory comes, it will be ours.